Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of the Manny Talks Shooting podcast, the shooting podcast for the shooter, by the shooter, because of the internet, because that's how we record things nowadays, it seems like, at least. But anyway, we have to talk about the title sponsor of the podcast, Go Fast, Don't Suck. They're supporting matches all over the country. They have awesome dry fire decals to put around your house that your wife and a significant other probably won't bitch about because they do not hurt the paint. He has awesome hats that I wear to cover my receding hairline. I like this hat, but it's mostly for the latter point. But anyway, banners if you need them if you're a match organizer or you just want a cool banner behind you in your dry fire dojo. You never know. You always could use one. But anyway, go check out those hurtful memes on Instagram because they're somewhat true. But that's for me. Anyway, go check them out. GoFastDon'tSuck.net. Tell them Manny sent you. Move on with your day. Without further ado, we're with the man of the hour, Mr. Scott Beebe, the match director of the World Pistol Shootout. Scott, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Manny, how are you?
Doing fantastic, and thank you for sitting down with me. I think we'll have an awesome, fun conversation.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too, and I've actually been looking forward to this since we first talked on the phone a couple weeks ago. But of course, family life and spring break gets in the way of everything.
It does. It's been a whirlwind for me. We were out the World Pistol Shootout for 10 days, came home for about 3.5, and then drove down to Orlando with the family and friends for spring break. And whirlwind of a time. I can't say it was a vacation because we didn't stop moving basically, except for a couple of afternoons by the pool and with many a cocktail at that point in time. But the drive home, oh my goodness, it was during some of those windy storms we had here on the East Coast, and we actually had over 4 hours of delays on our drive home.
Oh,
So it was an incredibly long day.
no, thank you. I would not like those delays.
Yeah. And then we got back and we jumped right into it at Dynamic Shooting Sports. We had our first week of the season out there with 3 matches. And as I mentioned to you, the preliminary, it was a fantastic week for us. We had an event that was on waitlist, 2 events that were waitlisted for different periods of time, and we're starting to see numbers back to pre-COVID at our events, which has been an absolute blessing. Absolute blessing.
Yes, it is, and it's kind of nice to see that in some areas where attendance has been down and it's coming back. So it's good to see people are out there shooting and enjoying their Second Amendment rights in the shooting sports.
The big thing too we're seeing, Manny, is we're seeing a lot of interest in new shooters. I probably had 14 or 15 people reach out to me last week alone, and which is I steadily usually get 2 or 3 people a week, but it's really been at times it's really jumped up. We've done some intro classes in the past, and but we haven't done them in the last couple of years because we've been seeing a decline in attendance. So we are looking at it, putting some of those events back on the calendar this year, and they're just events that for people to come in. We put a stage up for the different shooting sports that we have, $10 cost, and that's really just to kind of have them have some skin in the game so that they show up. But we'll typically, in the past, when we were doing these, we'd see 25 to 30 new shooters come out to those events, and we'd probably capture about 8 or 9 of them that become regular attendees over the year. So looking forward to that too.
Yeah, that's really nice to see new shooters. I did get a couple emails a couple weeks ago from new shooters. Hey, because they saw me posted on either social media or through USPSA or whatever application I was using at the time. But it definitely is nice to get those emails from new shooters. Like, what should I expect? How many rounds should I bring? Kind of, and it feels like you can go down those rabbit holes of emails, right?
Yeah, that's been one of 2 things that I regret that I have not done for the business. And I bought equipment last year and still haven't really even taken some of it out of the box to go out to the range and do some recording. And so that you're not having to type or cut and paste all that stuff, but literally put together a resource on our website so that people can go to it and have an FAQ page that really actually matters. Especially for newer shooters or people that are new to the area. I think that would be a great benefit. I think it would be a good time sink for myself. Like it would not be would not be wasted at all. And I think because my wife, bless her heart, the only thing I think it annoys her is the endless hours sometimes that I'm on the phone talking to somebody in the evening. And
Yes,
that's
yeah.
that's my hour. That's when I work. I either work at the range or I work on the phone at home. And unfortunately, I look at it like a customer service rep. You're out here, selling a product, and you need to take care of the customer. So if they want to call and talk, you call and talk.
Oh, absolutely. Like myself, like my wife is very upset with me most times because it's like, who are you on the phone with now? I'm like, I'll tell you when I'm done.
Hmm.
And the worst part is everyone gets excited and you're on the phone forever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She knows it. And I mean, she's a wonderful woman. My wife, she is my proudest accomplishment, if without being too demeaning in that, but she usually never says a word of my shooting. She didn't give me grief yesterday on Easter when we had a USPSA match. She gets it. The only time it bothers her is, I think, later in the evening. I think at that point she's just powering down and would like me to power down with her.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. That's why I try to be somewhat respectful to her and give her enough notice on most of these. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is happening like tomorrow. It came up today. I'm sorry.
Well, you're very accommodating. I was really kind of impressed with the process that you have for doing this, because this is all new for me. I'm not a big social media person. You'll see from even our Facebook page, it's more of just match announcements and videos of matches. And in fact, I was just editing one here before we got on for a rifle match, and I'll get that posted this week. But I don't do a lot with Facebook. Just really started doing. I actually had a couple people 3-4 years ago that did some Instagram stuff for us, but it wasn't until the World Pistol Shootout that I got back on Instagram, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
So this, kind of, I've been looking forward to it just to kind of get my feet wet a little bit more.
Well, this is a great way to get your feet wet. So, segueing that in, people really need to know who you are, Scott. So, who is Scott Beebe and how did you get into shooting?
Okay. So I own a range called Dynamic Shooting Sports LLC. We're located in Deerfield, Ohio, which is north of Alliance. So a lot of people know that area, but it's in kind of in the triangle of Akron, Cleveland, and Youngstown. We're about 45 minutes from the Western PA border. Uh, Dynamic Shooting Sports focuses mostly on handgun sports. We do some multi-gun and such, but our longest bay is 80 yards. So the handgun sports work the best for us. Our range is actually focused in on the competitive shooter. We're not your typical, range that you see mom and pop. We don't offer shotgun, skeet, trap, any of that kind of stuff. So we have our pass holders out there. They enjoy the practical shooting sports. Right now, 4 of the 5 shooting areas that we had set up yesterday still have the wall and fault lines sitting there. So our pass holders will come out and throw stuff out. So my focus has been on building that business over the last 5 years. I currently am also the Ohio North USPSA section coordinator. So I work with some of the other clubs in our area. I've actually worked with another club, Crooked Creek Conservation Club, up North Ohio, to run the Battle of the North Coast for the North Coast, where we're going to be coming up on our 6th year of running that match, which is our section championship. So a lot of my focus is on stage design, and that is because of where I got started and when I moved to Ohio. So I started shooting competitively a little over 9 years, almost 10 years ago, when I lived in Mesa, Arizona. So I had the opportunity to get started at Rio Salado Sportsman's Club. And if anybody doesn't know who Rio Salado is, you should look them up. They're arguably probably one of the top 3 clubs in the country. Uh, One of the statistics that I like to throw out to kind of put in perspective where the state of Ohio was when I moved back here 8 years ago, there were 27 grandmasters in USPSA at Rio Salado that I could name. There was probably more than that. There was only 3 in the state of Ohio, I think, when I came here. so that were actively participating. So if people don't know who Rio Salado are, it's the home club for Nils Jonasson, Rob Leathan, Kerry Pearson. And the funny thing about when I started, I was actually working as a operations manager for a restaurant development group in Scottsdale and Phoenix. And I used to drive US 60 out to Mesa, and there was a gun range that was there. I had come back over the winter to meet my sister's fiance, who is a sheriff's deputy here in Ohio, and he had taken me target shooting. And this was right around the time of Sandy Hook. So, I was kind of feeling the urge, hey, just like we've seen with a lot of other things that have happened in the last 8-10 years, sometimes when there's some drama in the news, people feel the need to go out and get a handgun. I had a conversation with my wife and I said, I think this is something I want to do. And she agreed with it. So I did. There was a gun club that was right off the US 60 that I would drive past every single day. Caswell's indoor shooting range. They're very well known in the Phoenix and Mesa area. They've got a whole string of stores now called C2 Tactical, I believe. But I used to go in there in my chef clothes at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon before the rush would hit. And I would take the guys their food so I wouldn't pay for range fees. And that's where I got started. They talked me into shooting a little Monday night indoor match they had that was kind of similar to IDPA in some ways, but it was an outlaw match. I met a couple of guys there, and after a few matches, I think they were kind of waiting to see if I was going to be a safe shooter or not. They invited me out to Rio Salado to attend Tuesday Night Steel. Bobby and Chris were their names. So I went out, and the first Tuesday night I was there was this guy that was a friend of theirs that shot with us. And everybody walking around was just worshiping this guy. And I thought he was a bit of a clown. But I was like, I had no idea who this guy was. And turns out this gentleman knew Chris and Bobby because they were really big into doing RC helicopters. And this guy, that was one of his hobbies. I didn't realize it at the time. He was a professional shooter. That wasn't until that evening I went home and Googled him and found out it was Rob Leatham. So that was my first outdoor match. Probably my fourth match ever I shot was Tuesday Night Steel at Rio Salado with Rob Leatham. That particular match, if you're not familiar with it, they get about 200 guns on a Tuesday night. They come through there, especially during the winter when the snowbirds are in. But what was really fun for me over the course of the next 8 months, typically when Rob was in town, a lot of times he would shoot with Chris and Bobby. And I just went and I met Nils at that time. That was when he first started dating his wife, Jessica, when I was out there. And he was friends with other people that I became friends with. So it was a great education because Rob, especially when he would come out to the range, if you just closed your mouth and opened your ears, he would give one person a little tidbit of advice here. And then he'd give another person a little bit of advice that was different over there. And over the course of 8 months, there was just so much information and knowledge that was shared. Jim Adami, who's their coordinator for all their practical shooting now, got to know him very well. He was friends with Chris and Bobby, so I got introduced with him. Muneki, Japanese American shooter that is dual citizenship, I think now, but he was very big at that time. He was also one of the stage designer and helped run matches out there. All the guys that actually ran matches, I at one point in time had a chance to dig in and help out. So it was a great education out there. The gentleman who was the section coordinator for Arizona at that point it was very encouraging and pushed me to get my RO certification. So I was actually packing my house to move back to Ohio the same weekend I was going to the RO class there. And it was a fantastic experience. But when I came back to Ohio, way USPSA was presented at the time was very different. A lot of the clubs were much smaller. A lot of the clubs have expanded since then. I actually went to a range in Alliance, Ohio. They had 2 bays, and to say one of them was a bay is a bit of a stretch. But they, after 2 matches, at the end of the second match, the gentleman who was the match director, Don Mayer, asked if I would like to take a look at a new piece of property that they were going to be moving the club to the next year, and wanted to get some input from me. When I came onto the scene here, I did extremely well, for the most part, competitively, even though I'd only been at it a short period of time. Things here in Ohio, I don't want to talk down about it, but they were not to the same level or degree as what I was seeing out at Rio Salado. Like, I really didn't have any idea how good I had it out there until I came to Ohio. Like, it was night and day difference. So Don and the gentleman by the name of Dave Stethkamp, who's passed away, God rest his soul, my predecessor actually as section coordinator, they invited me over to this range. This range only had 1 bay at the time, but they were going to build it out, so they were going to have 4 or 5 available the next spring, which they did accomplish. So for about 3 years, I helped run matches there. Transitioned from Dave's role into my role as section coordinator. And then there became an opportunity after about 3 years. The gentleman who had been running the range had a falling out with the landlord. And I asked the guy that was operating the range if he would mind me talking to the landlord. He said no, he was going to be moving to New Mexico and everything too. So I sat down with the landlord a few times, and we worked out a great deal. I'm almost embarrassed to say how cheap I have it for my lease out there, but he's been phenomenal. He actually handed the property over to his son. His son has been great with me. So this is the start of our 6th season where we've been now Dynamic Shooting Sports, and we've been running matches out there. The thing that we did, though, differently 8 years ago was Don and Dave came to me and said, there's something that you have from your experience in Arizona, and Dave Snethkamp especially, and then Don was supportive of it, said, you need to bring that here. Like, we need to raise the bar here. So we just took on the mentality that we weren't going to do local level. We were going to do a local level match. So yes, it's a local, but the stages that we put out level 2, level 3 stages. So as a result, we have a lot of people that are very competitive within the sport. A lot of people that travel to a lot of majors. So when our matches are on major weekends in the region, our attendance takes a pretty big nosedive. But we get those shooters that want to come out, want to have a challenge, want to be competitive, and they've made the place theirs. I would say we keep our numbers down as far as how many pass holders we have. We have about 150 pass holders, and I would say over 100 of them are competitive shooters. So our focus has been really that way. As such, we have some people that prefer not to come to our range just because of the level of difficulty or the mental side of it. I'm very big on the mental focus you need to have when you're shooting. We don't put out a bunch of burner stages where it's 3 or 4 positions and 3 or 4 targets at each of those positions, and you just hose them all down. You'll see that I like to put a lot of options in the stages that we put out. I like to put you right in the middle of the action so that you've got multiple directions that you can go to from the start, so that it's not everybody shooting it necessarily the same way. I will typically have a stage that everybody is going to run it pretty much for the same, just because I think there's also a nice barometer to that when everybody shoots it the same way. And I'm kind of glad to see the classifiers that have become The newer classifiers have had a lot more movement in them. And I think that's been a benefit for us. But that's kind of where I got started, who my influence, Rob Leatham and Nils were probably two of my biggest influences when I first was started. I had a friend of mine, Caleb Higby, who is friends with Nils. And growing up, they did a lot of shooting together. Caleb did a lot to help me out as well. Caleb, if you look his name up, he's usually in the top 2 or 3 revolver shooters at nationals. Great man. Owner of Speedy Bees. I don't know if you've seen that name in the. He's the owner of that. So another great individual. We've got some good people here in Ohio now that really doing a lot of positive things. The sport has grown huge since our range, came on. We've had, I think 3 new ranges. Steel Challenge has picked up huge in our area, and I'll tell you that I honestly was one of the people that kind of stayed away from it, but now I've got a 12-year-old boy who loves it, so it's hard to say no to it. And so our program that we started last year is flourishing. In fact, we ran only 1 match in March, and it was mostly because of the travel and the World Pistol Shootout. But it was a Steel Challenge match, and we were waitlisted for that. We literally didn't have any more space. We had everybody show up, which was great. So that multi-gun, I do focus it. I used to focus more on multi-gun for myself. We used to have a few ranges in Northeast Ohio that would hold multi-gun matches, but right now I am the only one. I'm actually the last match director for the Ohio State Championship for multi-gun. There's not been one in the since COVID has hit, and the one range that I use, because my range is not big enough, hasn't done multi-gun for over 2 years. So that's kind of the lay of the land and some of the things that I've been involved in as far as shooting sports. So again, most of my stuff has been handgun. I did, because of how much I enjoyed Tuesday night steel. We have a Wednesday night event that is almost a carbon copy of that, which we call dynamic steel. And I like to tell people it's somewhere in between Steel Challenge and USPSA. A lot of similar stages that you would see out at Rio Salado, some stuff that's my own. The other thing that we do is, because I try to build a lot of efficiency into stage usage, you will actually see that I will put stages up sometimes, or at least a stage, if we're going to have weekend events. And then we'll put out steel and shoot it like it's a USPSA match. So this week, Bay 3, I set it up Wednesday morning, and then I put out 12 or 13 pieces of 12-inch round steel, all at a safe distance, and basically tell guys, hey, at the start signal, 2 hits on each, you figure it out. All the rest of the stuff we do for dynamic shooting is a little more box-to-box type stuff. We tell you have to do different things at different places, which is good because it works on the mental game. But we try to do some USPSA type stuff, because the Wednesday night match is what we call our starter match for anybody. It's the freebie that we try to get people into.
Right. Well, and honestly, everyone likes to hear that ding of steel, right? It's super gratifying. That's why these new shooters are loving Steel Challenge as well. Is they shoot it, they hear the ding, it's like, oh, I hit it, yay! It's not like paper where, did I hit it?
Yes, and the other thing that's nice is it's an outlaw match for us. So I get the guy that comes in and has the leg strap on. I don't have to say take the leg strap off. He's rocking his SIG 320 that has the small magwell on it. No, I don't have to bump you to open. Just shoot carry optics. It's the first time he's at a match. He's not going to win anything. He's not going to place, that high. We just want him to get there, be safe, figure out if he's going to have fun or not, he or she is going to have fun or not, and go from there.
Yeah, and
so it gives me a lot more leniency, that way.
Yeah, and it's really all about having fun. If we don't do this to give headaches or heartaches, it's always for the fun of the sport.
Well, and that's one of the balancing things that I've had to figure out over the last 5 years, because we did take an approach early on of catering to the people that want to be more competitive. Okay.
Mhm.
The problem that you run into is not everybody can win. And so when you get all these alpha shooters that are there,
Mhm.
not everybody's going to win. So instead of asking, I used to ask, "Hey, how you doing today? What was your time?" And I still find myself doing that, especially with my own friends. The guys that I would go, if I go to another range, the guys that I go shoot with, I'll ask them those questions. But most of the time, I'm trying to take more of the approach. Hey, did you have fun today? Are you having fun? What was your favorite stage? Trying to focus in on that. I did at one point used to really worry about balancing squads out. Like, let's make sure we have the same number of people in each squad. Let's take some of the more experienced people and make sure we spread them out over all the squads. But what I found was, I got a group of 8 or 10 guys that they come out to the match and they're there because they want to hang out and shoot with each other. They may be some of my best shooters, my best ROs. If I start moving them around, it takes away from the fun from them.
Mhm.
So I've tried to do some things differently, with that, not be as worried, are we getting done with our squad in 45 minutes or, and not focus in on those little dynamics necessarily, and try to worry about the fun a little bit more.
Mhm.
um, One of the things that we've done to counteract that too is it builds into my mission statement, which is to grow the practical shooting sports in my region, is that anybody that is a pass holder at my range or a regular competitor at our matches, if they sign up for a range officer class, we will pay their range officer fees. And Dan Click, if you're watching this, I know I owe you $75 for Christine for last weekend. I'll get you the money. So Dan is a newly minted range master. He is the match director too at Cardinal Shooting Center, where they're hosting Carry Optics Nationals and LoCap Nationals this year.
Mhm.
So
Funny you speak
Brandon,
of
what's that?
funny you speak of him because he's my range master for the major match I'm hosting this weekend.
Oh, good. We will have to talk off air just for a few things so that you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yep, exactly.
Dan's a great guy. Don't get me wrong, but we've got some fun stories, from him. But
Mhm.
his place is doing great. We had tried to get into that particular facility for years. His counterpart, Don Bates, who runs the Steel Challenge matches there, including the state match that we have, the Ohio Classic. He got the foot in the door with Steel Challenge and was able to then get USPSA in, and Dan has just been off and running with it. So we're hoping that we can get the World Speed Shooting Championships there in the next year or two. So
That'll be nice, especially because living up here in the Midwest, it's such closer to go to Ohio
oh
than
yeah,
it is to Alabama.
it is. Not Alabama's got a great facility and everything. So I nothing against them, but to have something in your backyard, uh, they've already got a section, this Cardinal of 10 bays, and they're building another. They built another 8 or 10 bays so that we could do nationals, and those have been completed. We're actually going to be using them next month for the state match that we have, Buckeye Blast. So we'll have they have the facilities there, and uh, so we're looking forward to that. But you'll have fun with Dan. Dan's a good guy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and I will also be at the Buckeye Blast. I'm working that match, so.
oh, good for you. Well, I'm in charge. I'm not in charge. Dan's in charge. I got to remember Dan's in charge for that match. But I told him I go down and do setup for him and during the week. And that's been one of my things is I'm an RO. I'm going to go do my CRO stuff. But my focus, I've kind of, instead of working the match that way, I've stage design is kind of my thing.
Mhm.
Not kind of, it is my thing. So I typically will offer up a lot of stage designs. I didn't for Buckeye Blast, but then I usually put my efforts into spending 3 or 4 days doing setup work. So Sarge Sanders, who had been running the Buckeye Blast for the last 4 or 5 years when it was down at Briar Rabbit, that had kind of been my deal with him. It's just like, listen, I will come down here, work 3 or 4 days. I will travel back and forth. You don't even have to put me in a hotel. And I will do setup, but I'm just not going to shoot. I'm not going to work the weekend. That's when I work. Everybody else can come work. I'll work the staff match too. That's a big thing. You have a staff match. Who's working that, So that was something that one of the dynamics that we kind of figured out here in Ohio. I'm sure other places have figured that out sooner than us, but I'd have a couple of guys that would do that with me, and then I'd just shoot one day on the weekend. And a lot of times for me, because I have other disciplines that we have at the range, just because I'm not having a USPSA match because the USPSA regional match is going on, I still may have a multi-gun match I need to do, or now steel challenge. And I can't just put those people on a bench. That's not fair to them, is the way I kind of look at it. So.
Right. And if it seems like for the most part, there's more steel challenge guys who will shoot USPSA than vice versa, it seems like, at least here locally. But yeah, the steel challenge guys usually do get the short end of the stick, usually because if a major match is going on, something gets canceled for them.
Yes.
Unfortunate.
Yes. We're finding right now that we're getting a pretty even split. I have had quite a few people from the folks that came out to our steel challenge matches. Actually, we picked up some new pass holders. We're picking up new shooters in USPSA and even rifle matches. One of the guys that usually would come every match last year and shoot 4 guns at First Steel Challenge, he joined. He shot the both matches for us this weekend, the rifle match and the USPSA match, and I believe they were first for him. He never shot either one of those disciplines until now. So, like you say, you do get a lot of people. I think it's more of a progression too, Manny, that it's an easier match to get into, Steel Challenge, and and then you kind of progress.
Yeah, you absolutely do.
So, and while I have that second, we've had, because we do all these different disciplines, for anybody that's a newer shooter or getting tuned into this to try to see what the practical shooting sports are about, don't try to jump into multi-gun. I track all kinds of data. Everybody that knows me knows I've got all kinds of crazy spreadsheets. So we track match attendance. And I was actually looking at personal match attendance at one point, the first couple of years. When we tracked shooters that would go to multi-gun matches as their first ever practical shooting match, the retention rate was between 15 and 20%. So that's 1 out of 5 or 6 shooters that go to a multi-gun match as their first competitive match to participate in actually return to shoot another match. So, we're really big on, go to Steel Challenge, come to our Wednesday night dynamic steel matches. If you can't do that, go to a USPSA match, then go to a rifle match. After you've done those a few times, go to a multi-gun match and shoot 2-gun. If you decide you want to put your big boy pants on and bring the shotgun out, then go and do, 3-gun, but make it a progression. And for the people that have made it a progression, they've enjoyed it more and they've been more successful, and we've seen a much better retention rate on it.
Well, and I can agree. Yeah, that starting in multi-gun would be a very bad choice. You always feel discouraged because you don't have the right gear. You've got to go buy another shot, because everyone usually brings a pump shotgun, I bet, to their first match, and then they're like, I got to go buy a semi-auto and all this other whiz bangs.
Oh yeah, and I'm big even with handgun sports. I'm like, don't go out and buy anything. Bring what you have. And so again, the idea on Wednesday nights that we can be a little looser with the gear, for the division requirements because it's outlaw. I really tell people, it's like, if you have a 9mm handgun, you have a holster for it, and you have 3 or 4 magazines. You don't even have to have mag pouches because we can stuff those bad boys in your pockets. That's all you need to get started. Don't go buy something, don't go to the your local gun store and snag yourself what you think is going to be the slickest holster, because it's not going to work. It'll work, but not well. And we try to explain to them, it's like, hey, most of the stuff we buy online. It's not going to be available. You don't see double alpha sitting on the shelf. At your local gun store for the most part.
No, it's got to definitely be like a pro shop kind of scenario. I do know of some gun ranges, and this might be actually a big thing in Arizona. Maybe they actually have competition shooting equipment out there in some of these places.
Probably a little bit, in the fact that you would see stuff like Blade Tech, and you'd see a lot of Blade Tech out there. A gentleman who was a sales manager when I was shooting, and there's some long story about him selling demo stuff at a local matches that got him in trouble. But you'd see a lot of Blade Tech stuff, I know, in the stores, and that was something that original back 9 years ago, they were probably one of the more you'd see a lot more of that equipment on the range than you do now. We would see Safari Land all over the place, but again, that was Rob Leatham at the time. Now it seems like Safari Land is backing away completely from the competition equipment, but
Yeah, and there's probably a different there's so many good companies out there making products though, for the accessory gear for products. It's like the belts you can buy, the mag pouches. It's freaking Bob's your uncle and Susie's your aunt or something. It seems like, because you can find whatever you need on the internet.
yeah.
But I know we mentioned a long time ago. You mentioned you are the Northern Ohio section coordinator. How often do you coordinate with the Southern coordinator, Brad?
So not much, to be honest with you. The only thing that we really have is the Buckeye Blast. And so the story goes, my predecessor was part of splitting Ohio in half. Because Ohio used to be all one section. There was, again, I don't want to talk politics because I don't even know all the story, but at some point they decided to split it into Ohio North and Ohio South. Sarge Sanders, who you heard me mention, who was the match director for the Buckeye Blast, he had been the Southern coordinator, and the match was held at a Northern Ohio club. So we did that for years. And part of that was when the two sections split, we created our own. All the sections are supposed to have their own set of bylaws. I don't know. I know I sent Brad a copy of ours, but last I knew, they didn't have a set of bylaws. So we have a set of bylaws, and it has rules and regulations on how we're going to run a section championship. For the last 5 years, or 6 counting this year, the only club that has wanted to do a section championship has been Crooked Creek, where we've run the Battle for the North Coast, and that has become our section championship. The problem that we run into right now, from more bylaw or legal kind of background, and legal is not the right word from it, but from bylaws standpoint, is there's nothing to say that how we govern having a state championship anymore. Like there's nothing. So Brad and I spoke earlier or last year about it. And what we've agreed to do is every 2 years, we're going to flop who has the rights to the match. And so this year was the first of those 2 years. Cardinal and Dan Click had asked to do it. So I said yes. And it's kind of a gentleman's agreement at this point. I've got an email that's to Brad that kind of lays this out. So we can now point back to that as that's what the agreement is between the two sections. But so Dan will have it as long as he does well. He gets it again for next year, and then after that, it gets shifted down to Brad and the Southern section, and they have first rights in it. Now, if somebody doesn't want to do it, then we'll see if somebody wants to do it from the north, and we'll go again. So that's kind of that's my involvement with Brad. But I don't know Brad all that well, other than from him shooting at the Buckeye Blast. He's been fun to be around. He's been nice to talk to. I think he's been very professional. He's going to be actually one of the range masters for the Buckeye Blast this year, because we usually split those into zones. So we're going to have, I believe, him and range master instructor Paul Hernandez, I think, is going to handle the other half of the stages. Dan had said he wanted to do that and be match director, and I told him he was crazy. That's just way too much to bite off for anybody. And Brad, I think, told him the exact same thing, and he took it to heart. So, and that's the nice thing, is I don't feel like I have to worry about things with Brad, Dan, and just about most all of our match directors. Everybody here in Ohio is pretty much on the same page. It's definitely, I don't feel like I have a bunch of people with egos or anything like that. So, for the most part, it's drama free between. There's no club v club type thing happening.
Right. And it's nice. It's nice to honestly have, the camaraderie and the gentlemanship of, being able to just deal with things if anything does arise, but you don't have to really deal with it because there's nothing arising.
Yeah.
And I will say,
we've had, if in the past, I won't say the gentleman's name, but we had a younger shooter probably 3 or 4 years ago that was coming on the scene pretty quick, and everybody was having a little thing here or there, and I think there were some people that were having some jealousy too of, hey, who's this new young kid? There was a handful of match directors, including myself, that at a match actually sat down with him and talked, and he's turned out to be a even better shooter, but has turned out to be a great ambassador for the sport. He is a younger, he's an adult. I don't want to say he's a young man or anything like that, but he is a younger adult that my oldest son kind of looks up to, and rightfully so, for the way this kid had adjusted himself. But that was the thing. It was a group of us. It wasn't one person, poking the bear or anything. We all got together and sat down. So it was been a very united front on how we do things. So including with, that's the nice thing with the Battle for the North Coast. It's hosted up at Crooked Creek. They actually bring a trailer down, and we haul a lot of my equipment and stuff up there. We borrow stuff from other clubs so that we have the resources to put on a top quality match at their place. So again, it's everybody chipping in. It's a participation sport on all levels.
Yeah. Well, in every video I see, I think for the Battle of the North Coast is the DSS door.
The DSS door, yep. So yeah, Bud Conley, who is one of the match directors up there at Crooked Creek, actually sent me a stage he wants me to consider for that match. And of course it has the DSS door in it. So the DSS door did not make an appearance last year, and I don't know if it's going to make an appearance this year, but I've got a couple of new props that we're looking at. The DSS door, it's funny. We don't get a lot of people that DQ on that stage, which you think you might get for people muzzling their hands when they open the door. We usually get maybe 2 or 3, but I don't know what it's been. It must be something in the water we have on that stage or whatever it is. Those people that just get DQ'd for that particular infraction have just gone off to crazy land when that happens. And we've had video on it, and like I had one guy show me video of himself saying that he should be reinstated into the match or given his money back because he didn't DQ. And then you look at the video and you go, what are you talking about? The video, even though we don't look at video, the video was showing him doing it and showed both ROs in the position to make the call. It's just like, It's just crazy. But that one went all the way up to Troy. Oh yeah. So that was, yeah, that was, and like I say, it was crazy. That was like 5 or 6 emails, and I'm not talking one sentence. I'm talking like 5 or 6 paragraphs each email, and it was crazy. So the DSS door has not made it there the last 2 years. However, I had shared Brett Revel, who is the official match director up there. I had shared an idea that I'd like to build a set of wooden stairs that go up about 4 stairs, go across a platform, and then down. And I want it to be freestanding so we can move it and use it. But think of it going downrange, but there's a shooting area that's at the front uprange area, and that you actually have to go to the right and shoot diagonally under the stairs, going to the left, and you got to go around to the left, shoot diagonally underneath to the right. And that's the only place that you can shoot that. And then also when you're on top of the stairs, there's only targets that you can shoot from top of the stairs. So you'd have 2 kind of low crouching areas and 1 on the top. And then you proceed to go downrange for more shooting area targets. Yeah, you can write that one down and steal that one from me, Manny.
No, it's got my brain churning about something I saw at the World Pistol Shootout a little bit. So
yes, well, so that idea was originally given to, we'll talk about this a little bit ahead of time, to both to the Strayers, to Brandon and Sandy. And at one point, Sandy was going to build that out of stainless steel for me, and then backed off. And then we talked about putting the pipes or culverts in with the dirt. And so I had originally one idea, because they were going to build a new bay that didn't end up happening. So he buried those. And originally I meant them to just be a low crouch. But as you saw at the World Pistol Shootout, when I showed up, they had 2 of them and they were at ground level. And we had so much fun with that stage. It was hysterical. So Kyle Smith, who was the co-match director with me, we were out putting that stage together, and I had Kyle up and down on the ground for probably 2 hours as we were trying to position the poppers accordingly. And I would be downrange and he would be down there with making like he had a gun, and I'm like, how far up to my crotch can you see me? So he likes to tell funny stories about how you get to stare at my nuts for 2 hours one day. But we had a fun time putting that together, and it wasn't exactly what I had been looking to do, but then Brandon Strayer, he really latched onto the idea, and so then he had it in his mind, and his goal for me was he wanted that stage to be for Christian. When he shot it, he wanted it to be a 2 hit factor stage. So I did just about everything I could in my power to make that a 2 hit factor stage, and I still think he shot it over 3.5 or something. But we ended up that stage ended up being really fun. The problem that we ran into was the pipe was pretty long. So I mean, you had me down so far, and we had those mini poppers. I couldn't put full size poppers up because we couldn't get to the calibration zone. We couldn't get enough angle up. So that's why we used mini poppers. And then Brandon actually wanted it so that you'd have to shoot the popper and then go over and shoot a disappearing target to the far right or far left. It's like you just couldn't do it. They physically couldn't get up. So the triple steel swinger that we had, we put that out there, and it was just not moving. It was the slowest moving thing you ever saw. And we were going to put some more weight in it, and ended up not getting that done before the staff shot. What we found out, though, with the staff shot, a lot of people were having problems getting all 3 of the steel. So they'd have to wait multiple passes. So the fact that it was a slower moving swinger actually worked out to our advantage and made it took more time for people if they couldn't shoot it clean. So it ended up, because it was slower, it was better for us. So we had a couple of just dumb things that happened, that way. The unintended things that really made it a fun stage. But I remember on Friday, like nearly every staff member comes over and says, "Oh man, you're going to have a lot of people bitching about that." But when they're saying it, they all had this huge grin on their face. And that was the way it was over the weekend. It's like everybody loved that stage. I didn't get anybody that pissed and moaned about that stage at all. We had a lot of people that really loved it. We had a lot of people that were, that was the signature stage that they had a video of that they put up. It worked out really, really good, for us. I was really happy. And that was one of the things too, that we were able to demonstrate in that the rule set that we made up, that I made up for it. We had things where we could say a stage was not necessarily freestyle. And so that was one of the things we had in the written stage description, that it was, you had to engage that popper before you were allowed to engage the swinging target. And that's not something that you see that we can do at a level 2, level 3 match typically. But it really, it's still, there was still plenty of freestyle into it. We still saw people shoot it amazing, several different ways. But that was one of the little wrinkles the rule set allowed us to do. So I was very happy with that. And I think there was a stage before it too, where it was a medium course of fire, and we had both steel and paper in it. And we were able to say, you either shoot all the steel or all the paper first, and then you go to the other array. And again, that's not something we can do at a level 2 match, but it really added to the dynamic of that particular stage too. It forced it, and because that was not in a big bay, it forced a lot of lateral movement back and forth. So we were able to create more shooting positions in a smaller shooting area. So it added to the difficulty and the enjoyment of that particular stage as well. So a couple of things that we did a little bit that was differently at the World Pistol Shootout.
Well, speaking of that, now I guess I need to figure out, how did you get hooked up with Brandon and Sandy Strayer? Like, was that from a friend of a friend, or was that just like they just hit you up one day?
No, that's from a friend. I have the privilege of having a few of the Team Infinity guys that are pass holders at my range, as well as Andrew Hyder. When he was on Team Infinity, he would come up quite a bit. We've had some other people as they pass through the area come and shoot matches. So I've had a chance to meet a lot of them. One of my good friends is Papa Joe Richtowski. So, and obviously everybody knows he's greatly involved in the Infinity Works, Infinity Firearms. And so he put me in touch with Brandon. Actually, last June, I went out when we were still looking at hopefully doing the Infinity Open at that point. That actually went out right before everything kind of blew up. And so I was working 3 or 4 days out there, and Brandon was pretty impressed with what I had to do and my work ethic. Anybody who knows Brandon works 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's not a joke. He's in there Saturdays and Sundays. And we had a race this year to see who could get in there earlier. And the only days I got there before him were Saturday and Sunday. But I would typically show up, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning, and he'd already been there for an hour. He's a workaholic. He does go home at a fairly reasonable time, but he works hard and he works nonstop. He's not outside smoking cigarettes or sitting behind a desk. He's building guns probably 95% of his day. But I think I got his respect in that short period of time. That was kind of like my trial basis, and it was really good. They treated me like a prince. I will tell you that. They gave me a lot of free reign to do a lot of the things. They gave me some parameters, And there were some things that Brandon specifically wanted, especially the shootout portion that he wanted. But he gave me a lot of free reign to do a lot of the other things that we wanted to do. I had a great gentleman, Michael Bathon, who helped with coordinating all of the ROs. Kyle Smith, obviously, I think you know him as well. He did a fantastic job as the co-match director. He handled, all of the sponsors, getting the sponsors, and all the website stuff. So he did that, helped me with some of the practical stuff when I needed that. We had a gentleman that was going to do our stats, and he ended up having to back out about 3 weeks ahead of time. So I was actually doing double duty as match director and stats guy. Which, if there's the number one thing I don't want to do next year, it's that. I don't want to do both at the same time. That got a little hairy once in a while on Friday and Saturday. But so that's how I got. So through Papa Joe primarily is how I got the meat. And but they were, like I say, they were fantastic, to me out there.
Yeah, and that is awesome. I've met Papa Joe once. He's a good guy. We did save him from falling down, because when I met him, it was at the Livingston Gun Club at Orion Rocks Charity Blast, and it was a little muddy that day. And we all know Papa Joe doesn't get around the best. And of course, it was going down to the dark house stage, where it's a little bit of a sloped incline. And
Sloped in, yeah.
Yep. And it was like we made sure he didn't go down, because that would have been a.
If it was raining there, it's slick too.
Yeah, I dislike that bay the most.
Gotcha.
But yeah, met Papa Joe. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, and it's nice to see how much he actually cares about the shooting sports. I'll leave it at that, but he really truly does care.
Yes. Yep.
It was good to see him in Texas from Brian's live videos. You could catch Papa Joe in the background. Yep.
No, Joe really tried to, stay out of the limelight. I will tell you, though, he did a good job, especially with Kyle and I, keeping us on track, with things. And for me, especially, I was doing a lot of work in my off season. For us here, even for my range, I run matches from March, if the weather will let me, until the beginning of November. But then after that, I turn into a pumpkin for a little while. The last couple of years, I've coached my youngest son's basketball team. And Joe can tell you about all the drama this year, because we were working on, I was doing a lot of the stuff for the shootout. And so I was communicating with him or with Brandon, but a lot of times it was through Joe. And so he got to hear all the drama that I have from parents and leagues and officials and such. So youth travel basketball is a interesting thing.
No, nobody knew that 12-year-old basketball would be so hard.
I mean, 12-year-old seems like it's going to be fine. It's the 9 and 10-year-olds I can't even believe, some of the stuff that goes on, especially with parents and things. So I grew up. I refereed soccer for a while. I umpired baseball and softball from 7th grade until my mid-20s, I think. And I would never want to be a basketball referee. It's too, I just wouldn't want to do it. Some things that I saw parents do or say, just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But
parents are always the worst part of that, right? It's never the kids, it's always the parents.
Yeah. No, I love the kids that we have. I love the teams that we have. I love most of the parents that we have. One or two people, kind of ruin it for everybody. But anyways, that's a whole nother subject. But no, it's Papa Joe that got me involved with them. I feel very privileged to be associated with them. I think when I think of Infinity, I think of uncompromising standards and loyalty. I think those are two. If I had to look at, especially Brandon, who is becoming more and more the face of Infinity Firearms, I would say those are two things for him that, two characteristics or two values that probably most describe Brandon. Loyalty and uncompromising standards. And you see that the uncompromising standards, you see that in the products that they put out. I mean, they're just phenomenally gorgeous products, and they'll stand behind everything. And they stood behind their product long before. For me personally, I bought a previous team member's gun and I had problems with it. It went in. He and Casey tore through it once. I sent it back because I still was having some difficulty with it, and they redid the whole top end. The whole top end.
Mm-hmm.
Sent it back to me, no charge.
Wow.
I mean, you know what those guns go for, so that just is flabbergasted, me. And I'm kind of the person, Manny, that I believe in the golden rule. And this is not a religious thing. It's actually something that even my fraternity, believe. Treat others as you want them to treat you. It's just kind of a mantra, right? And the other thing about it is have other people treat you the way you treat them, or how you'd expect to be treated, that kind of thing. And I really feel that is how they did it for me. I never once had to ask for anything. I stayed at Sandy Strayer's house.
Mm-hmm.
I was invited to Brandon's house for dinner. I never went for I didn't pay. The only time I took money out of my pocket, the 2 trips that I went, was when I was at the airport and I was buying something at the convenience store. My expenses were taken care of. And then they didn't give me a hard time about anything when I wanted to take care of my staff. So when we had goods and stuff that came in for the sponsors, because we were doing a cash match, several of the goods would go to the staff for our staff dinner and for the drawings and things that we would do for them. Mm-hmm. It was never had to negotiate with them about any of that stuff. And I thought that was great. Brandon, because he is uncompromising in his standards, I think that if you don't view him from that perspective, I can see that some people have said, well, he's hard to deal with or whatever. And I've heard that from people. I was warned about that. I knew that I figured that out very quickly. And one of the things, especially this trip, I was very proud to stand next to him at any point in time because we had figured out a way to communicate, because we were mostly trying to say we're trying to get to the same point. And it was just different perspectives on how to get there. And that was actually an interesting thing that I come across in my experience in setting up major matches or even local matches, is a lot of people take the club perspective. That's the majority of what it is. Majority of what we have are shooting clubs around the nation versus owner operated clubs like myself. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I have a different perspective from that, just from that point of view of a range owner running matches versus a club running matches. Well, now I have a third perspective, which is this gun manufacturer that has a phenomenal range. It has better ranges than most clubs out there have, but they have a completely different perspective that they're looking at it from than what the club and the owner operator place does. And so it took me, not Brandon or anybody else. And I say Brandon because not that I don't do stuff with Sandy. That's who we're clicking the ideas off. Sandy's phenomenal. Just sit in the room and listen to him talk sometime. He's probably forgotten more about building guns in the sport than you and I have ever known. Like, he's just an incredible resource. And I feel like, honestly, when I'm in a room with him, like, I don't even know the right words to ask a question. Everybody else asks, and again, it's kind of like that Rob Leatham story for me. I just sit there and listen, when Sandy talks. But so with Brandon, I figured out how I needed to approach him and how we could communicate. And it just turned into a lot of fun, to be honest with you, Manny. Like, I was having a blast. And if you watch some of the shootout stuff, they were trying to tell me at one point on Sunday for the Open, like, I was so focused on, like, from that kind of USPSA mentality of, it's by the book. If you don't have X number of shooters in a particular category or class, then you don't recognize that category. It was escaping me that we had one super senior shooter that actually outshot all but one of the senior shooters. So we were having a super senior shootout, but obviously that gentleman also kind of qualifies, to a certain degree as senior. So we should put him in there. And, like, they're all trying to tell me this. And whatever language they were speaking, it just wasn't hitting me in the ears. And I kind of had a laugh at it when it happened. And I said something to Brandon about it, and he just picked up a beer and handed me a beer afterwards. I said, "Dude, I'm sorry, man. It just wasn't clicking with me." And he just kind of handed me the beer and was just like, I get it. It's like we had those kind of little moments of trying to get to the same place at times, but not just coming at it from different directions. And we'd always and that's the great thing, is we always got there. And it wasn't a lot of things. It's just little things. Because again, he would give me free rein on things, but he was very specific in things that he wanted for the shootout. And when he knew that we'd be on the same page. And so it was just about him getting that communication to me, because, he's so busy. He's not sitting in front of a computer typing it out, where me not having anything to do other than 10-year-old basketball, I have plenty of time to type all this stuff out and send it to him. So it could be more overwhelming to him. But I've learned to, I cherished that event. I will tell you that I was, as much as you want to say it's relief at the end of a big major, because you know how that is, and, on Sunday, you're glad that it's done. Monday, I was nice to come home and see my family, but by Tuesday, I already missed being in Texas. That was where I was.
Because it was warmer, right?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't. Oh my goodness. We showed up, what was it, Saturday morning, and we had to rehang, partly because of the wind, partly because they didn't make sense. We had to rehang all of the directional signs for parking. And we're talking, this is 5:30 in the morning. It's windy as all get out, and it's about 20 some degrees. And I had no gloves.
In Texas.
And granted, I was down to almost a t-shirt by the middle of the afternoon. So one of the things we already have had to talk about is, even if we waited 2 more weeks next year for this event, it would be well worth it. So,
yeah, and Texas can be unpredictable.
Yes, it can.
But so something I really enjoyed about even just watching from a distance was the match, the World Pistol Shootout match. Everyone was posting videos. It was great. You guys definitely have a unique rule set, and it was very intriguing to see that the stages were different from Saturday to Sunday, because they were truly 2 different matches.
That was kind of an ingenious thing that we kind of stumbled on, as far as it being different matches. And again, one of my best friends, Leland, if you're watching this, we call him Leland Range Lawyer Esquire. He loves to argue, and he is unfortunately DQ'd out of several major matches, and he has argued them very professionally to get reinstated. but I love him to death. He's my best friend. Anyways, we it was one of these things that we kind of stumbled on because originally we were going to do AM performance carry, PM open, and then in the next day do both smaller amounts in the morning, and then do both shootouts in the afternoon. And we switched it to this, and we were making them both their own match. And as we started to look into this, it just kind of clicked one day how beautiful this was. And even back when we were looking at Infinity Open and we were working with USPSA, I give kudos to Jake Martins. He actually mentioned you need to make sure that it's different from one match to the other. Troy was saying the same thing. If you want them to be different matches, they need to be actually different. And so we were looking at shooting positions being different, which we didn't do the shooting positions. What ended up actually happening, and I actually created a little bit of a monster on this, but nonetheless, let me, before I get into that, yes, different matches. It made it really easy. So there were actually a few little things that we saw in the staff match that weren't working or were a little bit of something that was kind of tying us up. So there was actually a couple of small changes that were made from the staff match to the performance carry match that we had. And then, we just had so many shooters that were going to shoot both the performance carry and the open division, or unlimited division, that we felt we wanted to make some changes. So at the staff dinner on Saturday night, instead of me saying, hey, this is what we want to change, I left it up to the range officers on their stages to make a few changes. And what I wanted them to do was, if we had 3 no shoots that were out there, I still want there to be 3 no shoots that are be out there, but let's change them around. Okay. I didn't say it in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
Some people did better than others is how they rearranged them the next day. So there were a couple stages that were even higher difficulty than what I would have put out on Sunday than what was out there on Saturday. So that's actually a learning lesson for me. It's like I need to be a little bit more specific in that or have a better plan. And I actually had a couple of sponsored shooters that came to me, not sponsored shooters. I had some respectable people that came to me, these because this wasn't super squad guys. Super squad guys didn't say boo to me about stages, other than they enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
I had not one negative word came out of the super squad at all to me. But I had some other shooters in a squad that came to me and they said everything was very challenging both days, but they said on Saturday they could tell that it was done by a stage designer or match director that had some purpose in mind, had a plan in mind. They felt that the swing we made with the changes with no shoots and stuff, it was a little bit haphazard on Sunday. And I think that they were probably right in some of that. A lot of the direction they went with, I would say, there's only probably 2 or 3 stages that we had that probably was a little over the top. But again, like you said, the top shooters, they weren't complaining about it. They were just going out and competing. But for the average shooter that was there, it was probably a little bit higher of a skill test than what we needed to put out necessarily. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It does. But like I do remember the one stage, I think it has 2 barrels in the middle. On Sunday was just like it was no shoot, free sale.
Yeah. No, there were a couple, like I said, I get it. We had one stage number 1 was a very mentally challenging stage. And so you could shoot it about 15, 16 different ways. And it was one of these ones that I gave the shooter their choice of where they started in the shooting area.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw a lot of variations in that one.
Yeah.
That was one that moved some of the no shoots around and didn't actually put more up, but probably the positions they put it up, they moved them to, took the challenge to the nth degree on it necessarily. But then you had that one that you mentioned, and there was one other that I saw, but there was actually one of the stages, stage number 5. It happened to be Caleb Smith, who is a Team Infinity shooter who's having some elbow surgery, so he didn't shoot the match. He just came. He's a friend of mine. He flew out from Ohio just to work the match. And he and Anthony Zabonik, who are doing that match, they did a phenomenal job actually of how they changed up their stage as far as target presentation goes. None of the targets got moved from Saturday to Sunday. It was just what kind of paper got put up. And they did a phenomenally good job with that. We actually, that was one where we had a number of the super squad came to me. I'd say probably 3 or 4 of them did. And they really enjoyed that stage. They enjoyed the options that stage had. And they said it was a complete, even both days, similar challenge, but completely different stages. And like I say, all we did was move where targets or no shoots were. So, and so Caleb and Anthony did a phenomenal job that day. But that would be one of the takeaways that I would have from the match, that we would do, a little bit differently. And, the thing to think about is it's a first-year match. It's a first-year major. Had they been running the Infinity Open? Yes. But they weren't running it, that was 8 years ago. So it's all new. It's mostly new blood now. The range master that we had was working that match 8 years ago, Lee. But it was brand, everything else was practically brand new, as was the format with moving into the shootout, side of everything. New rule set. That was a fun thing to do. That was another reason that Joe reached out to me initially for it, because they knew they wanted to do their own rule set. Even last year for the Infinity Open, they had been looking at doing a new rule set, or do you do USPSA? What do you do? Like, that had been a conversation, and that was part of the reason that I was drawn into it. Joe knew from my day as the match director for the multi-gun state championship, one of the things that I was frustrated with was there was no good organizing structure behind it, or group behind it. I mean, arguably, USPSA is the practical shooting organization in the United States. We have IDPA, we have other things, but they're the largest. They're the most well organized. With multi-gun, when I was back in 2019 when we did it, you still had a little bit of 3-Gun Nation was still hanging on. UML was coming up. Okay, you still had USPSA's rule book not widely accepted. You had a ton of outlaw stuff that was going on. Indiana, right next door to me, they've got their own rule set, and they've got like I think 10 or 12 different clubs that run that rule set that they've built. Rock Castle has its own set of rules. Now, obviously, Rock Castle's not around anymore, but they're really well known. So you didn't have a good, strong organizing body. And I originally was looking at those groups and said, this one really does this thing really well. This group does that really well. And so I started putting together a set of rules. So when Joe and Brandon, came and said, hey, we want you to write a rule set for it, well, I immediately dusted that off and started looking at that, tore that all apart. But then I started going to all the different rule sets and like, what is it that they, do really well? We had reached out to Max through Joe and said, hey, we were looking at a lot of your rule set and such. And he's like, hey, do what you want. You know, that was a fun thing for me. I'd met Max once or twice before, but never really had a chance to talk to him. So at the shootout, it was really nice to be able to come to him and say, hey, listen, there's some stuff that you wrote, and I think you probably can see I plagiarized the crap out of it, is what I told him. But the set of in our rule book, there is a portion that's in there that is about the using video to challenge a call, and that's right out of Max's stuff.
And that's only to benefit the shooter, correct? Or is that, or can that go either way?
No, we wrote it so that if a call is made against a shooter, basically the spirit of the rule, I don't know it right off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit of the rule is that you can use video to challenge a ruling by an RO or CRO range master. It's only to challenge that ruling. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can't benefit it in other areas, and it can't hurt you in any other areas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It can only challenge a call that was made necessarily. So if somebody had a foot fault and they weren't called for a foot fault, but they were being called for shooting too many shots in a Virginia count stage, let's say. Okay. If they can only go and challenge the extra shot that was called in for the Virginia count. If it shows that there was a foot fault, he or she can't be charged for that. So only the call that's being challenged. And I believe that's one of the things on my to-do list is to go back and look at the rule, because we also want to make it so it's just the shooter in question that can use the video evidence. We don't want people running around videotaping all their competitors, and then they do something wrong. They run up to the range master and say, "Oh, look, Johnny did this." You know, we don't want to create that environment either. You know, but we know that everybody's human being, and range officers are going to make mistakes. But when the potential for some of those mistakes are A, disqualification, or B, could impact a monetary situation, which is what some of the World Pistol Shootout is about, you know, winning some big bucks, then, you know, we need to put in some fail safes for that, I think. And I think that's where some of the video editing, evidence can come into play.
Right. And I agree. And I did look up the rules. It's in 4.5 for appeals.
There you go.
But yeah, I could definitely see the point of, you know, it being the shooter bringing it to you, not we'll say called by, you know, another shooter or bystander bringing you a video, because then that would take too long. Like I talked to Brian literally the day after the shootout. I think it was Sunday. And it's like it took 5 to 10 minutes for that video evidence to be discussed and collected. And it's like that's a long time to be getting iced cold at that point when you're ready to go and shoot for some money.
Well, you know, and that is one of the things too, was I think that we have to put together. Brian Conley was a godsend. The fact that he was there videotaping all of that in the moment was priceless. Absolutely priceless. I said it to him. I think I said it in a little video clip I had on Facebook. I've had several people that have gone back and rewatched all the shootout that he was recording, but it really gave us an opportunity to explain exactly what was happening. Nobody, you know, got to play Monday morning quarterback on us because they were getting our explanation, whether they agreed with us or not. And again, you know how opinions are and everything. And there's more than one way to do a shoot off. Like we actually had a number of the Italians that were there shooting the match say how they do things differently. If you knock the stop plate at the end over and you still left something standing, you lost right there. You know, they didn't do it the same way that we did it, you know, and which is fine. You know, we made our rules. We set our rules for determining a winner right up front. Everybody was on the same page. We had no competitor that gave us a problem on that. But it was priceless. So when we had a problem the first day with a popper, and we got to explain what was going on, and it was, Christian, that was right on tape. It's like, hey, this is what our rule is. This is what we're going to go out and do. And, it was right there, whether you agreed with it or not, we said this is what was going to happen. And, that's why I say it was absolutely priceless. But you had mentioned about the video stuff. Yeah, that did take too long. And so we need to figure out a little bit better on how to do that. In looking, part of the problem was we were having problems pulling up the video on the video camera so that we could see it. But when you looked from two different angles, it looked like two different things were happening. Okay.
Right.
And the gentleman who made the call on the foot fault also was wavering. He couldn't tell me one way or the other. And so that was why I said that there was a reshoot was needed then at that point. When the RO was lacking in 100% confidence, then, and the video evidence wasn't conclusive, then no, we're going to go that way. The biggest thing that I could say is that when I brought that to them, I said, the easiest way to do this is to just reshoot it. T, I think is her name. She was the first one to say, yes, let's reshoot. And she ultimately was the one that lost. And so, not that I didn't go over and want to congratulate the victor. My first thing was to walk over to T when we were done and tell her how classy she was, because I thought that was a very classy thing to do, which was to leave it up there, on the leave it on the stage. And that was the same thing the day before when we were with the popper and ended up being the final four. Brian Connolly was right there up in the mix when I said when I got the four of them together, and I said, my understanding from you guys is you guys want to wear your big boy pants, and if there's a problem with the popper, we're not even going to worry about it. We're just going to reshoot. And I got all four of them to say on camera with Brian Conley that yes, that's what we're going to do. So we changed the way we're going to do things, but all four competitors agreed. So while it was maybe different in the future, it was still on videotape that was going to happen. So little things like that, or big things like that, Brian was capturing. And from a match director's point of view and maintaining, equitable standards for everybody, that was again, it was priceless. So
yes, absolutely. And it is nice to see, to have the video. So then there's no he said, she said either. It's this is what happened. It's right here on someone's phone and on the internet. Now, with the popper, did the popper actually have to still be adjusted, or?
Yeah, we still adjusted the popper afterwards. Yes. So I was watching him shoot it, and the popper had loosened up and was angled forward. He hit it 3 or 4 times. I don't even remember how many. He hit it dead in the calibration zone. It was not even coming up to 90 degrees. There was no way that thing was going over. And I know that Christian was panicked. He and I talked about it a couple of times afterwards. There was no way that thing was going over when I went over the calibration. I knew it, and I know he was fretting it, but it was not going over. So we did have to go and fix that. Actually, most all of the poppers that were on that stage were brand new poppers that we had just put out for the first time. So we actually had Mr. Fix-It. I had him our Fix-It guy. He went out and I had him go through every single popper Sunday morning. He spent like 2.5 hours going through all the poppers for me, putting in new hardware and again on everything, so that we didn't have any problem. But as setting up stages, there's no such thing as a perfectly flat piece of land. And no matter what you try to do to make it, I mean, literally, if I had there was a few MGM poppers I had. If it was the first one in the line of white, then it was going to be another MGM one in the first line of the white poppers on the other side. I wasn't going to have, any of that if I could, but it still was never going to be 100% identical.
Mhm.
So, that's where lane choice came in. Bill was saying something to me, and I've known Bill for several years. He said, if you look at this one, and I was walking it with him and Christian, and they were both, pointing out little things here and there. And I was just like, you're talking that you have 1 more inch on the second popper on the white on the left-hand side, Bill. He's like, yeah. He goes, it's not really a big thing, but yeah, you got this. And I'm like, okay, it's not really a big thing. So I love Bill to death. I probably I could tell a few stories for a few hours with Bill. He's a great man. I'm glad to have him over in Pittsburgh now. He and I are conspiring on a few fun ideas to try to liven up the USPSA matches that we have. So we're looking at a border war type thing and a series event. So, but he's a good guy. But the shootout ended up being a lot of fun. Brandon's wanting to make that into a bigger thing, especially Saturday morning. We had our match briefing there, and at 6:30 in the morning, he had lights going, he had music pumping. It just had a vibe to it, really did. And it's funny too, since you do, major matches. Sunday is always that day that we're kind of thankful for. You see people start to check out and just think about getting home. You know what I mean? If it's been a long week. And we definitely had some of that, not as much as I normally see, and it's because of the shootout. But the shootout on Saturday night there was more of a vibe to it. There was also more people in the performance carry division than there were in the open. And that gives me one chance here. I had a couple of things that I saw that came through social media, Manny, and it wasn't from shooters at the match. It was from people that weren't attending the match. And somebody made a poke, and I don't remember who, about there being $5,000 or whatever number they threw out on Saturday, but only $4,000 on Sunday. The money was allocated by attendance, and we had more shooters that wanted to come shoot performance carry than wanted to come and shoot open. So that's why there was more money on Saturday than there was on Sunday.
Kind of surprising. Now, did anyone figure out a reason why more people wanted to shoot Saturday than Sunday?
I think that would be some good polling information. I didn't really ask, so anything I would do is just speculation at that point. But it was an easier division to come in and shoot from a gun financial platform. We still had plenty of people. Well, we called it performance carry, and you had the people that could shoot their 2011 with a slide mounted optic. For the most part, it was carry optics guys that came and shot their carry optics gun. We definitely had a number of people that were shooting a 2011 gun, especially in the super squad, but it was mostly carry optics guns that I saw that were there, or carry optics gun that they slapped the magwell on, things like that. And I think that just speaks to what we already know is happening in the sport. Carry optics is, it's the division right now at USPSA. It's the only division that has its own national championship. So, we definitely see that. Again, because I mentioned before, I track all the numbers for our section and for the Southern Ohio section. Carry optics is just kicking ass, in our state. So I think that's probably the biggest reason.
Yeah. And it'll be nice to see how carry optics or performance carry changes in the next coming years, to see what people want to really shoot and what's drawing them. Is it going to be that 2011 slide ride gun they want to shoot, or are they still going to just shoot a currently legal carry optics gun with a magwell? Or
well, here is something that I think is getting lost in the debate about now it's limited optics and USPSA, and I don't want to get into all of that. as far as, do we, do this or do that, major, minor. Here's the thing that I've seen for the last 2-3 years, Manny. Literally almost at one point, almost every week, somebody was showing up on Wednesday nights at my place as a new shooter with a staccato, with a slide mounted optic. So at that particular time, our divisions were very similar to USPSA's. And so you'd bump them to open, right? We'd see the same guy show up at a USPSA match, and now all of a sudden they're shooting open. Guess what they were? They were pissed off and they didn't come back the next match because they knew that they were at a disadvantage. But that's what we're seeing. All of these tactical defensive guys, we're seeing a lot of them. Or even 3-gun guys, that shoot those 2011 slide mounted optics, instead of a full open gun necessarily. They'll shoot that in the open division. So I think that's the biggest upside that we have in USPSA and similar events, is to open the door to these people. These are people that have already invested into competition level gear. And if they now have another place to come to compete, well, that's just great for the sport. That's great for the organizations. That's great for the clubs. It's great for the range owners. And it's great for them, So I like it. I can tell you that there's a kid, I call him a kid, but he's a police officer. He's a younger man. He just won our USPSA events yesterday, but he was one of those guys 2 years ago. He's showing up at a USPSA event with his 2011 with the slide. He used a staccato with a leg strap. Got to tell him he's got to take the leg strap off, and then he getting bumped open. Fortunately, he's shooting with 8 of his buddies. They're all in a similar boat. They all moan about it, but they have a good time because they're shooting with their buddies. It comes back to our previous conversation on that, right? This weekend, nearly every one of those guys were still shooting a year and a half later. They were all in their own squad, and this young man won the event yesterday, shooting carry optics. Beat several of us, including myself, that were shooting an open major gun. So, and he's shooting carry optics minor. So, it's just like, if we could have made it easier for him to get into the sport, and others. I mean, there's still a couple people out of his group that haven't come back since. But if we can make it easier for people to get into the sport, I think we have to be careful of not trying to be everything to everybody. And so that's the balance that we're going to have to figure out. We've seen that in multi-gun sports. I think that there have been some I think that there's been some organizations in the 3-gun sports that they tried to be everything for everybody. And the problem that does is at some point it makes the divisions less competitive because there's less competitors competing in each division because there's so many of them. And we're seeing that to some degree in certain organizations,
Absolutely. So I have a few more questions I want to get to before our time is over today.
Okay.
One of those happens to be is if there could be any rule other than the video rule would you like to change for the next match, what would it be?
Ooh. I don't say that I have anything that's overly glaring. I mean, I have a list of everything. We can improve on every front, and that's just about every major that's out there.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't know if there's a rule. I know that one of the things that we talked about, and it's in there, for the make ready, keeping it at 30 seconds.
Yep.
We didn't have to enforce that rule ever. Like that was not a thing. The only problem we had, the major thing that I think that we need to do, because I think both Brandon, myself, and others, we'd like to see more people involved in the shootout, like a larger number of people get to participate in that. But the biggest thing we have to do is we have to create some kind of a rule or structure that keeps the event moving quicker. and less time between actual runs in the shoot off.
Right.
Like, I think that's probably one of the bigger things that we need to address, especially if we want to go, that direction. And I don't want to give, I don't want to put too many ideas out there, but we're looking at things to get more people involved in the shootout side of everything, and not just the top 8 necessarily.
Right.
So we're looking at some things like that, and actually, Infinity's looking at sinking some money into some solutions to that. Let's say. So
It's
I don't know
always
if
a good thing.
I don't know if I answered the question.
No,
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a question. Is
Okay.
there any specific rules that people presented to you or others that they thought were a little far-fetched or needed some tweaking?
I didn't get anything on that. I was just curious, because you wrote the rule set, so there's always got to be that one thing. It's like, if I could do this over for that match, I would have done this. But no, I didn't hear any complaints.
I'm gonna say that we're kind of looking at seeing what goes on in the rest of the world. Um, right now we have it as slide stop thumb rests and no frame mounted thumb rests.
Mhm.
That's something I've got earmarked, on an equipment side to look at. Do we allow those or not? We took the perspective when we were building this was a carry up. We were improving upon or expanding the carry optics division. So that's why we went with just a slide stop mounted thumb rest and not a frame mounted thumb rest.
Mhm.
And trust me, there were many guys that oohed and awed about that to me in the last week running up to the event, because they hadn't read the rules closely enough. So there was definitely some guys that were heating up some frames to loosen up the Loctite to take off the frame mounted thumb rest.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And I guess one thing I was like always baffled, I guess not baffled is not the right word, but surprised by, was that even in unlimited division, you could still only have a magazine length of 141.25.
yes. So that was something that Brandon presented
Mhm.
to me, and I actually appreciated it in that it's he felt it was something that raised the degree of difficulty necessarily in forcing a reload at times when somebody could just big stick it. And being that and this is something I didn't share earlier, my thing starting out was I was a production shooter for years.
Mhm.
And it wasn't actually until I took over ownership of the range that I really looked into doing anything differently, because I thoroughly enjoyed the challenge of trying to figure out when my reloads were. And if you actually look at the way I design stages, I take that kind of perspective of how can I make it challenging for the production shooter. And that's why I think you see that a lot of times I'll have 5, 6, 7 different positions that you have to shoot from. And so it gets the production shooter really thinking about where you do your reload. And I think that's the fun thing to do to an open shooter or an unlimited shooter, is that you now have to make them think about, where am I going to do my reload? Because I like the mental challenge side of things. So when Brandon presented that, I was like, hell yeah, let's do that. So it was interesting too, and I think we probably have to look at how we did this. So we'd have to tell the shooters, you have to bring your magazines to us as well. And I can't even tell you how many people had illegal magazines. That was we were pounding some on the table to get them into the
Th-
gauge.
This is where you have just a box of, next to the mag gauge was infinity base pads. Be like, there's $100.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you know, uh, uh, Taryn Butler's probably going to send me some hate mail.
Yeah.
But again, I've shot against Taryn a few times. I like him. But there's been a known issue in the past with some of those, and open shooters didn't necessarily worry about it.
Mhm.
But there was, what, you had a year or so of a lot of guys from Carry Optics who were getting bumped to open because their Terran Tactical base pad didn't fit the gauge. And so they came out, and I think they made an adjustment, but they made statements and everything else. So it's not any new news, but it's new news to open shooters that now have to use a 140 bag. They didn't care about it before. So, but everybody took that pretty good in stride. It was just a point. And it was funny because I came back with a bunch of new Infinity mags that had been used in the match. And we had been using this little orange triangle decal that we were putting on them to signify that they were good for the match. And I was thinking to myself afterwards, how easy is it going to be to take one of these off and just put them on another mag? Surprisingly, they were more difficult to take off, and they wouldn't restick to anything. I figured that out. That was after I got home to Texas, from Texas. So it ended up, again, working out. But, it was an interesting proposition that was made. Other than the case gauging and that process, we really didn't have anybody say anything to us about it.
Yeah, it's just part of the rule set. It's part of the game. Everyone who wants to play the game is going to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And they're not going to knowingly, for the most part, they're not going to knowingly disobey the rule. They don't know what they don't know. That they're they don't care about their mag. Most open shooters don't care that their 140 mag isn't 140 because it doesn't matter in true open division USPSA rules. It could be, as long as it's less than 171, you're golden.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we ran into, I think, with a few people. But most people, it was just the process of getting the mags. And, we heard that from people. And again, we were doing something different that other people haven't done. So it's the first time. So we knew that we were going to have, I don't want to say issues, but we knew that it was going to be something that was going to be brought up. There are definitely things that it's a huge range. I don't know if you've ever been out there, Manny, or if you got a perspective of it, but it's a big range. And so one of the things that we did was we started if you think about how we move squads, we started in the middle and moved outwards. So then when you got to the outside, you didn't have to go from one end of the range to the other. You only had to come back to the middle to go back out again. And we communicated that. It was in the squad matrix. We still had people that didn't. I mean, we had people that didn't read the rules. We had people that didn't look at the squad matrix or didn't even look at the match book. Nothing new. You've run a level 2 match before. That still happens at other level 2 matches. So we ran into that, and there's different things that we can do for match management that will help with that. We didn't think that transportation from point A to point B was going to be that big of a deal. It was a bigger deal than we thought, Well, there's little things like that. Just you live and learn on. But the number of people that, not even number, the percentage of people that came up to myself, Brandon, Sandy, Kyle, that thanked us, told us that they would be back next year, was overwhelming. Like for the whole week afterwards, nearly every member of the staff sent me an email thanking me for allowing them to be there. That's unheard of. That's just absolutely unheard of. And so, felt very blessed by that. We had a lot of people that really helped out in just about all of the Team Infinity people that could be there were there at some point early to, help out. I had Anthony Bruno at 6:00 in the morning on the day that he's going to shoot, standing in the 25-30 degree weather in the parking lot, help him park people. That was just the mentality that people took. And so, that's, again, I would say that is something that Brandon inspires. It's the loyalty side of everything. Like, there's no question about it. The Giardinos were awesome. They busted hump all week. you know, we just had incredible people that were there.
Hmm. Well, that's awesome. And it's really nice to see that people love the match. They want to come back. The staff want to thank you for letting them be involved. Do you
Yeah,
have a date for next year yet?
working on it. We may be working on other things too. So
There you go.
we got there's a lot of options. I owe Brandon a phone call right now, um, to talk about some of those options and where we're at with everything. Um, I'm really looking forward to it. Need to find the right balance with my own business and family to some degree,
Hmm.
because it's a big commitment to get out there, you know, for that bit of time. But it's something that I want to be a part of. As I said, the earlier, the mission statement for DSS, which is myself, was to grow the practical shooting sports in our region. And I feel that we've done a lot to accomplish that. So getting involved in the World Pistol Shootout and working with Brandon, Sandy at Affinity to that end is taking my mission statement and growing it into a new direction that I feel like I'm ready to be at. It's just finding that right balance. So, but there's been a lot of great ideas that have been thrown out on how to uh, improve on this match, how to change it to make it more inclusive, get more people involved, get more sponsors, more manufacturers involved too. Uh, I'd like to see I'd like to see Staccato and other manufacturers a little bit more involved into this, as far as, you know, maybe adding a team event. I don't know, you know, or an aspect of that to it. I think there's some stuff that we can do with that. I know that Sandy Strayer's got some ideas that he's already starting to throw out on how to be able to do some things at the facility to expand it. Again, I don't want to put out any specifics until those things kind of break ground, because I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. But what I'm encouraged by is all of the progressive forward thinking that people are putting towards this match. So, and that's not even just the people that are involved. We've got some of the top shooters that have come back to us, and they're giving us their feedback and wanting to see it grow and expand. So that's even encouraging, you know. Um, but and that was one of the biggest takeaways that I have. When you get people from the super squad that are giving you that feedback and aren't belly aching about this, that, or the other, and aren't, you know, trying to drive the rule book to their advantage, like we see sometimes. It was just a fun time to be around those guys. Really enjoyed watching them, you know, shoot and participating with them. It was a thrill.
Hmm. That is a blast, and it's nice to hear about all those things. Um, when I lost, do I lose my last train of thought? No, I don't, because I'm gonna keep rolling. But um, it was honestly, this has honestly been a fantastic conversation between you and I. It's nice to get to know more about you. I've heard about you throughout the our area, and it's nice to get to chat with you after this match and all the feedback you've gotten and the ways you're going to progress it, going forward as well. Um, where if they want to get in touch with you about either this match or anything or DSS, where can they get a hold of you, Scott?
So best way, two ways that you can do that. My website is dynamicshootingsports.us. There is a contact form that's in there. You can go into the contact form anytime you want, fill it out, and send it to me. I will give people my email address, which is scott@dynamicshootingsports.us. Again, scott@dynamicshootingsports.us. Send me an email. I am a one-man crew. I'm going to tell everybody that up front. So sometimes it may take me a little while to get to back to everybody. With two boys that play travel baseball right now, and 3 matches in 5 days, I didn't sit down in front of my computer that much. So I do have some periods of time that it takes me to get back to others, but that's probably the best way to get to me.
Well, there you go, everyone. If you need to get a hold of Scott, hit him up there. And Scott, thank you again. It's been a blast, and we'll have to do this again at some point.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. And to the listeners, until next time, get out and do things, and I will see you on the next one.